Ethan Cole was known as a man who carried the weight of 2 lives on his shoulders. In the world of business, he was cold and sharp, a CEO who never left room for mistakes. People feared his silence more than his words. He built his empire from the ground and protected it with every breath. But behind the glass walls of his office and the shine of his tailored suits, there was a truth no one saw. He was a single father. His daughter Lily was 7 years old. She was the only part of his life that made him smile without thought. She had big, curious eyes and a laugh that broke through the hardness of his heart. But being her father was not easy. She missed what other children had. She wanted a mother who could sit beside her at school events or tuck her in with stories that never ended. Ethan tried, but he could not give her everything. He worked long hours, and though he loved her, he often felt he was failing her. In the quiet corners of his mansion, Lily wandered alone. Her toys kept her busy, but they never filled the space in her heart. Ethan noticed this more and more. One evening, as he came home from a long meeting, he found her asleep on the couch, her little arms wrapped around a book. She had waited for him, but sleep had taken her first. He felt a sharp pain of guilt. He picked her up gently and whispered that he would do better. The mansion needed help too. It was wide and cold, and though workers came and went, none stayed long. Then Claire Miller arrived. She was not like the others. She was young but strong, with steady hands and eyes that showed both kindness and sadness. She took the job of maid without complaint, and never spoke much of her own life. She worked hard and carried herself with quiet dignity. Ethan hired her without much thought, but soon he saw how she changed the air of the house. Claire did not only clean, she noticed Lily, listened to her stories, and laughed with her. She braided her hair in the mornings and read to her at night when Ethan was still buried in his files. Lily began to smile more, and her laughter returned to the halls. Ethan stood back and watched. He saw how icily Claire filled a space that had always been empty. He felt thankful but also uneasy, for he was not used to letting someone step into his private world. One late night, Ethan sat in his study with papers spread before him. His company had received an invitation to a high society gala. It was an event where all the city's powerful men and women would gather. Investors would be there and rivals too. He knew if he went alone once more, whispers would spread. Questions would rise about his stability, about whether he could balance family and business. In his world, image was not just pride, it was survival. He looked at the paper and felt the old weight pressing harder. He could not bring Lily. He could not appear with strangers who meant nothing. Then a thought came to him, strange but clear. Claire. She was already in his house, already part of Lily's life, and she carried herself with simple grace. For one night, she could stand beside him, not as his maid, but as his partner. It would keep questions away, at least for now. Ethan leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. The idea sounded wrong, but also necessary. He did not know if she would accept, but he knew he had no other choice. As the night grew darker, he prepared himself for what he would ask of her, unaware of how much it would change all their lives. The morning light came through the wide windows of the mansion as Claire moved quietly from room to room. She carried a tray of breakfast for Lily and smiled when she found the little girl already awake and waiting. Lily clapped her hands when she saw Claire, her joy simple and honest. Claire set the tray down and sat beside her, brushing her hair away from her face. Moments like these made Claire forget the heavy days of her past. Lily's happiness was enough to make her feel needed again. Ethan walked in a short while later. His suit was pressed, his tie perfect, and his eyes already filled with the weight of the coming day. Watched Claire and Lily together, his chest tight with feelings he did not wish to name. He cleared his throat, and they both looked at him. Lily jumped into his arms, and he hugged her, but his eyes returned to Claire. She stood waiting for his words. He asked her to follow him to the study once Lily finished eating. When Claire entered the study, she saw papers spread on the desk and a look on Ethan's face that was sharper than usual. He asked her to sit. She hesitated, not sure why he wanted a private talk, but she obeyed. Ethan leaned forward, his hands clasped, as if holding the weight of a secret. He told her about the gala, about the importance of his image, and how arriving alone would harm more than his pride. She listened quietly, her heart beating faster as she waited for what he would say next. Then Ethan asked the question. He wanted her to pretend to be his girlfriend for one night. The words struck her like a storm. She stared at him, unable to speak at first. She was his maid, nothing more. The thought of standing beside him in front of powerful people felt wrong and frightening. She asked him if he was serious. His eyes did not waver. He told her he trusted her, that she was the only one who could help him protect what he had built and shield Lily from cruel whispers. Claire shook her head, saying she was not fit for such a role. She had no fine clothes, no knowledge of high society. She was afraid of embarrassing him. Ethan listened, and then told her he would take care of everything. He promised she would have what she needed. He only needed her to say yes. His voice grew softer when he reminded her how much Lily adored her. He said it would mean the world to his daughter. Her heart weakened when she thought of Lily. She remembered the little girl asking if Claire could stay forever. She remembered the warmth in her eyes when Claire tucked her in at night. She could not turn away if this would help Lily, even for a short while. Still, she worried, for stepping into such a role would blur the lines of her place in this house. Ethan waited for her answer. He did not show it, but inside he feared she would refuse. He had no other plan, and he knew his rivals would not forgive even a small weakness. Claire finally spoke, her voice low but steady. She said she would do it, but only because of Lily. Ethan nodded, though relief ran through him stronger than he let her see. For the rest of the day, Claire felt uneasy. She worked as usual, but her mind kept drifting to what lay ahead. She pictured herself walking beside Ethan, people staring, whispers flying. She tried to steady herself by reminding that it was only an act. Yet deep inside, a small fear grew. What if she stepped too far into his world and could not find her way back out? That night, as Lily slept peacefully, Ethan sat in his study again. He stared at the empty glass in his hand and thought of Claire's answer. He told himself it was only for business, only for the sake of appearances. But a part of him, the part he rarely let speak, whispered that it might be more. He pushed the thought away, not ready to face it. All he knew was that the game had begun, and nothing would be the same after this. The night of the gala arrived faster than Claire expected. The mansion was filled with quiet tension as stylists moved in and out, bringing gowns and shoes, adjusting details that made Claire feel out of place. She had never worn such clothes before. When they handed her a dress, soft and elegant, she hesitated. It felt like she was stepping into a role she was never meant to play. Still, she remembered her promise to Ethan and to Lily, and she let them prepare her. When she finally looked into the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. The woman staring back was graceful, her hair pinned neatly, her face bright and calm. She touched her own reflection, wondering if this was truly her. Lily came running into the room and stopped, her eyes wide. She gasped and told Claire she looked like a princess. Claire smiled at her words, though her heart pounded with nerves. Ethan entered a moment later, dressed in a dark suit that fit him like armor. When his eyes fell on Claire, something inside him shifted. He had seen her every day as a maid, with her hair tied back and clothes simple. But now, standing before him, she carried herself with a quiet beauty that caught him off guard. He covered his reaction quickly, but he could not hide the way his gaze lingered. He offered her his arm, and for the first time, Claire felt the weight of what she was about to do. Lily cheered and waved as they left together, her small face glowing with excitement. Ethan told Claire not to worry, that all she had to do was stay close and let him guide her. She nodded, though fear twisted inside her. The gala was held in a grand hall filled with chandeliers and music. The moment they stepped inside, whispers began. People turned, eyes filled with curiosity and surprise. Ethan Cole, the ruthless CEO known for keeping his life private, had arrived with a woman by his side. Claire felt every stare, every murmur, and wanted to disappear. But Ethan kept his arm steady around hers, leading her forward with calm authority. They moved through the crowd, and Ethan introduced her with confidence. No one guessed she was a maid. Instead, they saw a woman who carried herself with quiet strength. Claire spoke little, but when she did, her words were thoughtful. To her surprise, she managed to charm some of the guests. Ethan watched from the side, a strange pride rising in him. He had asked her to play a role, yet she was becoming more convincing than he expected. At one point, a rival CEO approached with a mocking smile. He commented on Ethan finally bringing someone to the event, hinting at old rumors about his loneliness. Ethan's jaw tightened, but before he could reply, Claire spoke gently, steering the talk away with grace. The rival walked off with a faint scowl, and Ethan looked at her in quiet shock. She had protected him without even trying. The night went on with more dances and conversations. Ethan asked Claire for a dance, and though her hands trembled, she agreed. On the floor, under the soft light, he guided her with steady steps. She looked up at him, and for a brief moment, the world around them disappeared. It felt real, too real, and both of them felt the dangerous pull of something they had promised not to feel. When the gala ended, Ethan escorted her back to the car. She let out a long breath, relieved it was over. He told her she had done more than he asked, that she had been perfect. She blushed at his praise but turned away, afraid he might see the truth in her eyes. Ethan leaned back in his seat, silent, but his thoughts were restless. What was supposed to be only pretend had already begun to feel like something else. The days after the gala brought changes that Claire did not expect. Whispers followed Ethan at work, but this time they were different. People spoke of the woman at his side, her quiet beauty and calm presence. Investors felt reassured, and his rivals grew cautious. The plan had worked better than he imagined. Still, what lingered most in his mind was not the victory, but the memory of Claire's hand in his during the dance. At the mansion, life seemed the same on the surface, but underneath it was shifting. Lily grew more attached to Claire each day. She followed her through the halls, asked her to read stories, and begged for her company at bedtime. One evening, Lily accidentally called Claire Mommy. The words slipped out with pure innocence. Claire froze, her eyes filling with emotion she tried to hide. Ethan heard it too and felt a pull deep in his chest. He said nothing, but the sound stayed with him long after. Ethan began to notice Claire in small ways he had ignored before. The way she laughed at Lily's jokes, the way her hair caught the light in the mornings, the way she faced every task without complaint. He found himself watching her when she was unaware, and each time he caught himself he forced his eyes away. He reminded himself it was all pretend, only an arrangement. But his heart did not listen. Claire also struggled with her feelings, she told herself. She was just a maid who had stepped into a role for one night. Yet she could not forget the way Ethan had looked at her at the gala, how his eyes had softened when they danced. She worked harder to keep her distance, but every moment with him and Lily pulled her deeper into a place she knew was dangerous. One afternoon, Ethan invited Claire to join him and Lily for a small family outing. They went to a park where Lily could play freely. Claire watched as Ethan pushed his daughter on the swing, his usual stern face melting into laughter. It was a side of him the world never saw, and it made her heart ache in a way she could not explain. When Lily ran ahead to chase birds, Ethan stood beside Claire. For a long moment, they said nothing, but the silence was full of words they both feared to speak. As days turned into weeks, their pretend relationship had to continue. Business partners invited them to dinners, charity events, and private meetings. Each time Claire dressed and walked beside Ethan, and each time people believed what they saw. The act was flawless to the world, but inside both of them felt the lines blur. They smiled at each other in public because they had to, but in private those smiles lingered longer than they should. Ethan started to dream of a life that felt impossible. He imagined Claire not as a maid but as a true partner. Someone who could stand by him not just in front of others but in the quiet nights at home. Yet fear held him back. He had already lost once before, and he could not risk exposing his heart again. Convinced himself that keeping his distance was the right choice. Claire tried to remind herself of the same. She had her own past, her own scars, and she knew she could never belong in his world. But when Lily looked at her with love, and Ethan's gaze lingered too long, her resolve cracked. The bond between them was growing stronger every day, and she feared where it might lead. Neither of them spoke of it, but both knew the truth. What began as a simple act had become something neither of them could control. The walls they had built were slowly breaking, and soon they would have to face what was waiting behind them. The city held another grand event, this time a charity gala that gathered wealthy families and business leaders. Ethan had no choice but to attend, and of course Claire was expected to join him again. She dressed in another gown that had been chosen for her, and once more, she looked like someone who belonged in his world. Ethan tried to act as if it was nothing, but when she stepped down the stairs, he felt the same pull he had felt before. At the event, the lights were bright, and the music filled the air. Claire stayed close to Ethan, answering greetings with polite smiles. Many guests remembered her from the last gala and spoke kindly of her. For a while, everything went smoothly until another man approached Claire. He was young, confident, and clearly charmed by her presence. He asked her to dance, ignoring Ethan's stiff expression. Claire hesitated, but before she could reply, Ethan placed a hand on her arm and refused on her behalf. His voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut. The young man walked away with a smirk, and Claire turned to Ethan with surprise. She asked why he had done that, since it was only a dance. Ethan said nothing at first, his jaw tight, his eyes dark. Finally, he admitted that he did not like the way the man looked at her. Claire's heart raced, but she reminded him that this was supposed to be pretend. His silence afterwards spoke louder than words. The rest of the night passed, but something had shifted. Ethan stayed closer to Claire than ever, as if guarding her from the eyes of others. She felt his protectiveness, but also sensed the jealousy he could not hide. When they returned home, the air between them was heavy. Claire went to her room without a word, but her thoughts would not rest. She realized she had fallen for him, even though she tried so hard not to. She lay awake, telling herself it was only a dream, one that could never last. Ethan sat in his study, staring at the dark night outside the window. He had promised himself not to let his feelings grow, but the thought of another man's hands on Claire had set fire to his chest. He tried to reason that it was only part of the act, that she was only his maid, but none of it mattered. He wanted her near him, not just for show, but for real. Yet fear and pride kept him silent. The next day, life returned to normal at the mansion, but small changes showed. Ethan's eyes followed Claire more often, and when their hands brushed by accident, both pulled back too quickly. Lily sensed something too. She asked Claire again if she could stay forever, her young voice full of hope. Claire smiled at her, but said nothing, afraid her heart would break if she promised something she could not give. The tension reached a peak when Ethan invited guests to a dinner at his home. Once again, Claire played the role of partner, serving smiles instead of trays. She moved through the evening with grace, but inside she fought against the feelings that grew stronger every time Ethan stood close. One of the guests complimented Claire, saying Ethan was lucky to have her. Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile, but his eyes told a deeper truth he could not say out loud. Later that night, after the guests had gone, Ethan found Claire in the kitchen cleaning up what little mess was left. He stood in the doorway for a long moment before speaking. He told her she had done well again, that people admired her. Claire thanked him softly, but when their eyes met, silence fell heavy. The unspoken feelings were there between them, clear as the night sky. Both knew what was happening, yet both were too afraid to take the next step. As the house grew quiet, they each went to their rooms, carrying the same storm inside their hearts. The game of pretending had gone too far, and neither of them could deny it any longer. Weeks passed, and whispers began to spread beyond the walls of the mansion. Some rivals had grown suspicious of Claire. They hired people to look into her past and soon discovered she was not from a wealthy family, but worked as Ethan's maid before she appeared at his side. Rumors threatened to surface, and Ethan knew how fast the world could turn such news into a weapon. His rivals wanted to expose him, to show that his image of control was nothing but a lie. Ethan came home one evening with anger pressed tight in his chest. He called Claire into the study and told her what he had learned. She listened, her face pale, her hands shaking. She said she never wanted to cause him harm, that she had only agreed to help for Lily's sake. Ethan tried to stay calm, but the fear of losing what he had built made his words sharp. He told her the lie had gone too far, that the danger was real now. Claire lowered her eyes, guilt heavy on her heart. That night she made a choice. She packed her small bag quietly, moving through the halls without waking Lily. She stood for a long moment outside the little girl's room, tears running down her face. She whispered goodbye, though Lily slept peacefully inside. Claire left the mansion, believing it was the only way to protect Ethan and his daughter from the storm that was coming. When morning came, Lily woke to find Claire gone. She searched the house, calling her name. And when she could not find her, she cried until her voice broke. Ethan rushed to her side, confused, then realized what Claire had done. Lily clung to him, asking for Claire, asking why she had left. Ethan's chest felt hollow. He tried to comfort his daughter, but the truth cut deeper than any words could heal. As days went by, Ethan threw himself into work, but nothing filled the silence Claire had left behind. Lily grew quiet, her laughter gone. One evening, she fell ill with fever, her small body weak and trembling. Doctors came, but even as they gave medicine, Lily whispered Claire's name again and again. Ethan sat beside her bed, his heart breaking as he held her hand. He realized no deal, no contract, no shield of power could fill the emptiness. Only Claire could bring back the light in his daughter's eyes. For the first time in years, Ethan felt fear not for his business, but for his family. He understood that he had been blind. Claire was not a threat to his world, she was the missing part of it. She had given Lily love, and she had given him something he thought he had lost forever. He could not let her go. Pride no longer mattered. Image no longer mattered. What mattered was the bond they had formed, a bond stronger than any lie. That night, Ethan left the mansion and went searching for Claire. He looked through the places she might have gone, asking anyone who might have seen her. Hours passed before he found her in a small apartment on the edge of the city. She opened the door in shock when she saw him standing there. He looked worn, his eyes filled with desperation she had never seen before. He told her about Lily, about her cries, about the sickness that had come with her sorrow. He told her how empty the house had become without her, how he could not go on without her by his side. His voice broke as he admitted that what began as a lie had become the most real part of his life. Listened, tears falling, her heart torn between fear and love. In that moment, she knew she could not stay away. She agreed to return with him, though her heart trembled with uncertainty. Ethan felt relief wash over him as they left together. For the first time, he allowed himself to hope, even as the storm of rumors waited outside. He had chosen not his pride but his heart, and there was no turning back. When Claire returned to the mansion with Ethan, Lily's weak face lit up with joy. The little girl called her name and reached out with trembling arms. Claire hurried to her side, holding her gently, whispering comfort until Lily's tears stopped. The fever did not vanish at once, but with Claire by her side, Lily's strength returned faster. The doctors said she would recover, but Ethan knew it was Claire's presence that had healed what medicine could not. The mansion felt alive again. Claire moved through the rooms with quiet grace, and Lily followed her every step. Ethan watched, his heart heavy with truths he could no longer deny. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ethan asked Claire to meet him in the garden. The night air was cool, the stars sharp against the sky. He stood in silence for a moment before speaking. He told her he was done pretending, confessed that the game had become real for him long ago, that he had tried to fight it but failed. He said she was more than a maid, more than a partner for appearances. She had become the heart of his home, the reason his daughter smiled again. The reason he could imagine a future not filled only with work and loneliness. His voice was steady, but his eyes showed the fear of a man laying down his pride. Claire listened, her chest tight with emotion. She had dreamed of hearing such words, but feared them too. She reminded him of the difference in their worlds, of how others would judge, of how dangerous the whispers could be. Ethan stepped closer and told her he no longer cared about whispers. He cared only about the truth, and the truth was that he loved her. Tears filled Claire's eyes as she tried to answer. She admitted she had fallen for him too, though she had fought it with all her strength. She told him how much she loved Lily, how the little girl had given her a sense of family she thought she had lost forever. Standing under the stars, she could no longer hide. She told Ethan she loved him. The confession lifted the weight that had pressed on both of them. Ethan took her hands, promising that he would protect her, not as a CEO protecting an image, but as a man protecting the woman he loved. He said he would face the world's judgment if it came, but he would not face a life without her. The following weeks were not easy. Rumors tried to rise, but Ethan stood firm. When rivals mocked, he ignored them. When investors questioned, he answered with calm strength. And when the world tried to measure Claire by her past, Ethan measured her by her love, her honesty, and the way she held his daughter when she was afraid. Slowly, the whispers faded, replaced by respect for a man who did not bend to pressure, and for the woman who stood by his side with dignity. Inside the mansion, life changed. Claire was no longer only a maid. She was part of the family. Lily began to laugh again, her days filled with warmth and safety. Ethan felt peace he had not known in years. Still carried the weight of his empire, but now he did not carry it alone. One quiet evening, as Lily slept peacefully upstairs, Ethan and Claire sat together in the living room. He reached for her hand, and she did not pull away. Their lives had begun with an arrangement, a lie told to protect an image. But the lie had led them to the truth neither could deny. They were bound not by duty or by show, but by love. In that moment, Ethan knew he had found what he had been searching for all along. Not power, not victory, but a family. And Claire knew that her place was no longer uncertain. She was home.